All right, grand rising, grand arrival, grand return. Peace and blessings to the righteous and repentant alike. This is Sophia of the AmaruKhan Band of Indians, and we are here to discuss the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction cycle. This is a really, really important cycle. I watched an in-depth video about how this cycle works. And what it has done in the past, and I am going to do some more digging into this. So this is the first in a series of videos on the Jupiter, Saturn and Jupiter cycle. Again, this particular conjunction took place in 2020, December of 2020. So if you have children, grandchildren that were born in that December 2020 time period, especially the end of December, I think the exact conjunction was on December the 20th or the 21st, then they have this conjunction built into their charts. I happen to know several children with this cycle in their charts. One of the important things about this is that this cycle is different than other Saturn-Jupiter cycles because this is the beginning of a 200-year basically transit of Saturn and Jupiter conjuncting in air signs. This is a very rare transit that hasn't been around for a very long time. At least I believe what I heard was the 1600s, the 1400s, something like that, the 1300s. And then before that, that's why I said I got to do a deeper dive into it. And then before that, it wasn't around until like the thousands, the 900s. And then before that, it was around the time of Jesus' birth. So this is a very, this is not a usual common cycle for Saturn and Jupiter to have in air signs. And we also know that this was the start of a new cycle because it happened at 0 degrees of Aquarius, which everyone says we're in the age of Aquarius. Now, let me clarify my position on the age of Aquarius, because as I have mentioned many times over, I do not believe we are in the age of Aquarius. I believe we're in the age of Leo. And I can understand why I would believe that, because Leo is the transmutation of Aquarius. So again, you can be in the energy that's automatically being shifted to the planet, or you can transmute that energy into the higher octave of it. So the higher octave of Aquarius is Leo, where you pull the strength from the inside. Does that mean you don't use the sun and the moon to ground the strength that you pull when you transmute it? No, you can make use of both things. So again, these things that occur celestially do not occur in a vacuum. They go together. And so this is what this cycle is about. All of these cycles are about how to transmute the energy, how to ground the energy. You ground it in Aquarius, but you transmute it in Leo. So again, my position is still the same. It's just now I can explain it with a little more clarification, whereas before it was a little bit, I didn't really have anything to ground it into, but now I actually have something to ground it into. So let's take a look at the chart. So this is the chart for when this conjunction happened. It was on December the 21st. It began on December the 21st, but it extended out for a few days at least. So it's not like this was a one and done. And of course, it's a 3-degree radius, especially with these larger, slower moving planets. And you can even see how Pluto is also baked into this energy, because Pluto was at the end of Capricorn, and so it's not all the way into, it's not really close enough to be in a tight orb, but it is close enough to be in a wider orb, which usually people consider that to be 10 degrees. So it is right there. And this also occurred in the 11th house. Now, we haven't talked a lot about the houses in astrology yet, but we will be discussing the houses more. I do discuss it in my daily transmutation reports, but I haven't really gone into detail or enough detail about how exactly these house things work, because it's really important for understanding astrology to really get into your mind what the houses mean. But anyway, the 11th house Recently, I heard an astrologer discuss the 11th house and also the 4th house as actually, it was a lady on TikTok, and she was saying that a lot of her black clientele, they have really, really deep connections to the 4th house and to the 11th house. And so the 11th house is the house of community. And so you have this conjunction beginning in the house of community. And this is going to play out over the next 20 years. So that's another reason why it's really important to kind of follow the houses, because then you will know the flavor of this, of the whatever it is you're looking at, you'll know the flavor of it. So because this is in the 11th house, which is the house of community, and a lot of people, again, I mentioned this in a short video I put out, but one of the issues is that the chart is read backwards. So most people believe houses 7 through 12 are the things that happen in the light, but that is not the case. Or they happen above, out on the outside of you, and the things in houses 1 through 6 happen on the inside of you, but it's actually reversed. The things in houses 7 through 12 happen on the inside of you first, and then it manifests into what happens in houses 1 through 6, which are supposed to be on the top half of the chart if you're reading it in a clockwise format instead of a counterclockwise. As you can see right now, this is going counterclockwise. But we're moving into an era where things are going to be done in a clockwise fashion. Even if the planet is still, quote unquote, rotating, spinning in reverse, which is debatable, just in general, in order to create a vortex, you have to have something going the equal and opposite direction. You don't create a vortex by having, and all of this stuff is about vortex math. Which is the way the heart pumps. The heart is a vortex. It has one pump pumping one way, and it has the other pump pumping the other way. So as long as people keep thinking that everything is pumping in the same direction, they're missing the opportunity to transmute the energy. And the planet does not operate it doesn't operate like that. That's why people are very... if they're just using astrology to make predictions, they don't get their predictions right. This is why people who, if they're just using numerology, they're also not getting their predictions right, because they are calculating that everything is moving in a circle, but it's not a circle, it's a figure 8. It's a vortex. And so we are trying to apply the right, I would describe it as pressure or tension in the equal and opposite direction to get things to back into alignment. And so what I'm finding out is that as you move into the transmutation of the energy, starting with reading the chart in a proper order and interpreting it in a way that is accurate, then you're more than likely to be able to not only time things, which you guys see I do all the time now, but also how to interpret what you're seeing, especially when you're watching a traditional astrologer who doesn't take into account the whole concept of vortex energy, and how vortexes work. And even how the heart pumps. So, but people who channel, this is why this is very, very difficult, because people who channel the energy will give you the correct answers, and it's not because they're using the astrology, it's because they're channeling it directly. So it's, I'm finding that the more that I think about how these things are done, the easier it is for me to explain it to people, and also the easier it is for people to understand. So it's not just that people are able to get certain things done, and how they're able to get it done. It's also that when you are when you're channeling is a direct source, whereas if you are just flat out interpreting things, that's not the same directness as if you are actually channeling the energy, channeling what's going on. You know, these are different things. Astrology is a tool that people use, but channeling is another tool, and so you can reconcile these two tools. However, you have to be a person who is, you know, working on that from that perspective. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this conjunction here, some more before we go into how this energy is going to play out over the next 20 years. So let's talk about what else is at 0 degrees. So you have Jupiter and Saturn both at 0 degrees of Aquarius, but you also have the sun at 0 degrees of Capricorn. And so because the sun is in the sun house, which is Uranus, that's the house of the sun. Well, not the house of the sun, the house of the father, represented by the sun. It's almost like you have the sun being quote unquote born. So the 10th house is the house of father, how you present yourself on the outside, your public facing persona. That typically has to do with the 10th house. But these are things that you deal with internally, because as I mentioned, houses 7 through 12 are really supposed to be at the bottom of the chart, and the houses 1 through 6 are supposed to be at the top of the chart. And so we have been told that we behave like our father on the outside, but I don't believe that's the case based on my interpretation of the chart. I believe we act like our father on the inside, and what we show on the outside is our mother, which would make sense because what we're actually composed of is literally from the mother. It's from the mother. We're composed of what she gave to us, the physical components of the earth that she gave to us. So it would make sense that we would carry the father on the inside, and we would deal with the mother on the outside. So again, this is the opposite of what anybody is teaching. Nobody is interpreting it like this. So again, when you're looking at the 11th house being related to community, it's the community that's on the inside of you, which is your ancestors, your lineage, your bloodline. Your blood and your bloodline that's on the inside of you, the things that you bring in with you from previous incarnation cycles. This is a new beginning of a new start of. And so I think that it's really important to consider this over this next 20 years, because it's a 20-year cycle. And it's different because I think that's all I want to say about this particular cycle, because we'll just take a little look at the 2040 conjunction, which happens on, of course, Halloween in 2040. The difference is this is going to be happening on the actual outside, the forward facing, because it's going to happen in houses 1 through 6. House 1 specifically, this is going to change who we are on the outside. So the first conjunction is going to change who we are on the inside, and the second conjunction is going to change who we are on the outside. Not only is it going to change who we are on the outside, it's also coming with Libra energy. Now, Aquarius energy, let's discuss that. Aquarius energy is altruistic, friendly, humanitarian, inventive, individualist, intellectual, unpredictable, unique, because Aquarius energy is Uranus energy, right? That's for this chart. So this happened in Aquarius energy, which is again an air sign. It is a fixed air sign, so this is not all over the place. This is grounded in the most reality that you can ground the air sign in. Now, to me, Libras are unhinged. I've known so many Libras. I've dealt with so many Libras. To me, Libra energy is unhinged energy. Libra energy has to deal with affable, aesthetics, artistic, allegedly balanced, charming, cooperative, extroverted, gracious, idealistic, very indecisive, peacemaker, refined, and sociable. So you have this energy is going to be on the outside, and it's going to be in relation to how you present yourself on the outside, because it's going to be in the first house. The first house is literally who you are on the outside, right? And because it's going to be ruled by Venus, it's about the capacity to love and value. So and also Libra is a cardinal sign, so Libra has all the hallmarks of air energy, and so that's what makes it different than this Aquarius energy, which is being grounded in by this Earth energy, which is the Capricorn, which was also at 0 degrees. And again, Capricorn is conservative, disciplined, methodical. This is because Capricorn is related to Saturn. And Aquarius is also related to Saturn, because in the old way of interpreting astrology, Aquarius was ruled by Saturn, but in the new way, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. So it's, again, rooted in the ideals of the air principle, but it's fixed air, so it's more solid than other air signs. If I was going to describe Aquarius, I would describe it as ice, because yes, it is. Oh, not ice. No, yeah, ice. Well, yeah, ice, because it's the water bearer. So it's the air that makes water, so you can't necessarily see it, and then it's grounded in something that you can actually tangibly hold, which would be a block of ice. So that's how I would interpret Aquarius, as ice, because it bears the water, but it maintains its air principle, but it's grounded in something that is actually tangible, like an ice cube. So that's how this energy is, but it's on the inside. And the Libra energy, and it's in the first house, so it's going to be kind of like the fire of the water. So it's more like steam, which is like, you can see steam, you can see it as it rises up, and it rises up off the water via heat. So there's a heat source somewhere heating it up and making it rise. So this is the difference between how these energies are going to feel. So first it's dealing with you on the inside, which was a 2020 conjunction. Then it's going to deal with us on the outside and bring that fire really into our soul. So it'll be a less grounded energy and more aggressive, out there energy. And this is happening at 17 degrees in 2040. So again, you have Venus at 17 degrees. So what I'm saying is not it's not incorrect at all. And Venus is in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is literally fire of the water. So, or water of the fire, something like that. Sagittarius is a mutable energy. So this is why I say Libras are unhinged, because they're a little too flexible. They go too much with the flow. They lean into that flow a little bit too much. And so you have Venus literally in a sextile. Not just Venus is there. Venus is a sextile to this energy. So it's going to be very, very different from this conjunction we have right now. For sure. So all right, let's get started looking at the actual astroturography for this. So this is, again, part of the public-facing information that I'm going to give to everybody, so everyone will know how this energy is going to play out, and then you can double-check me, triple-check me. But for the actual timing of this energy, that's going to be on my Patreon, where you're welcome to join us if you're interested in this type of astrology content. We're going to be going into a lot of the cycles in this manner to kind of see what's going on and see how we can actually manage this energy. All right, so the very first placement we have, oh I didn't even do this right. Okay, so let me pull out my thing. All right, I meant to write them all down and I did not, so we're going to do this old school, the way that I always do. This is going to probably take a little bit of time, which is good. Y'all get a little more from me than I had anticipated, because I did something different. So, as I always say with these, with the astroturography, let me just, for people who are not familiar with this particular science, it is that every point on the astrology wheel has a tarot card associated with it. This is based on some research that I did, and some research of another YouTuber. His name is Lord Oseron. His videos are still up. They're still available. You can see them. So what I did was I took that information and I did a little bit more research, and I added a little bit more information to it. And so now what we have is a placement of the wheel and of the energy that we are capable of. This man is making me a little uncomfortable. Okay, y'all, let me move before I go into this, because he's making me uncomfortable. Like, where's my keys at? He keeps looking out here, but like, I'm allowed to be here. I'm just in a visitor parking space. Let me move. I'm somewhere where there's no shade, so you just gonna have to bear with me so I can move to somewhere else where there's some shade, hopefully. Because he keeps looking out here like I'm doing something. Hope it doesn't get too hot. Ugh, of course it is. Let me just. That's okay. I can take this. That was nice and comfortable. Alright. Y'all gonna have to excuse me. Sorry, it moved. So, the astroterography is basically a method that applies the degrees and the decans, the degrees and the decans of the astrology wheel to tarot cards. Now, my method of divining via this method is more precise than others, because a lot of people have just taken what they heard from someone or what they were taught about what degrees were assigned to what decans, and actually just copied and pasted. They did not do any deep thinking, any research on how the wheel was set up. So what happened is a lot of the different decans with tarot and the astrology were flipped. They purposely inverted them or transmuted them so that you could never get the full benefit of the energy. So for example, a good example of this would be Gemini energy, which is 8, 9, and 10 of wands. It doesn't make sense for it to be anything else, but if you talk to anyone, they will tell you it's the 8, 9, and 10 of swords. Well, on the opposite of Gemini is Sagittarius, and Sagittarius has the 8, 9, and 10 of swords. And so what happens during Gemini season is people make cuts, and the cuts work out for them because that's the energy that's supposed to be that's the energy you transmute to during Gemini season. You transmute from wands to swords. But if you're in Sagittarius season and you transmute your swords to wands, you're not going to do that. You're not going to have the feeling for that. You're going to feel like you should just cut people off. And indubitably around the holidays, people do cut people off, and that's not what you're supposed to do around the holidays. I mean, you're supposed to transmute the swords energy to wands energy and do corrections and not cuts. And so this is just one thing that they've done. So everywhere where they've flipped the energy, they flipped it. I'm gonna do a whole video about this. They flipped it in such a way that you can't properly you don't know that you're transmuting the energy. You're doing it naturally. And then of course they've made it so that it's not the way that's supposed to be done. If you're supposed to cut, you need to cut. If you're supposed to correct, then you're supposed to correct. Of course, my wands are correction, swords are cutting. There's a big difference between a smack on the wrist and a final ending. Huge difference. So there's a big difference between the 8 of swords and the 8 of wands. I mean, these are big things, and you have to know which one is correct. So most people, no, disrespect or anything bad to them, they just take what they've heard and they regurgitate it because it makes sense to them. Because a lot of people channel. This is why I was talking about that before. They don't actually. They are reading the energy, but they're channeling the energy and applying it to what they see. And again, this is not a bad thing. People can, whatever is the most beneficial way for someone to interpret the energy. But when it comes to an individual trying to interpret someone else's reading, this is how you can make the readings more accurate. This is how you can make the readings more personal if you know what's actually going on with the with the stuff. If you know what's actually happening, you're able to interpret the energy much better. So that is my obvious suggestion for that. Now, another thing that has been done with the placements of the tarot cards in the traditional tarot and astrology is that they read the pip cards in a different order than I do. I read the pip cards Queen, Knight, King, and then Page or Princess, because it is my belief, especially based on the prodigal son, that the princess never left the king. The daughter never left the father's house. They want you to believe that, again, like I said before with the 10th house is the father, and the father is out there somewhere, but the father is within you. You never left the father. Jesus said that many times. I am my father, and my father is in me, and my father is with me. Not out there somewhere. It's the mother who in nature you find out there somewhere. And so they try to make you think you have this disconnected relationship between the mother and the father, because you think the mother is in you and the father is out there, but really the father is in you and the mother is out there. And the mother didn't leave you either. She gave you your flesh. She wrapped you in flesh, but she wrapped the father in flesh, if you understand the type of analogy that I'm trying to make. So this is about putting things back in the correct order. So, and every princess turns into a queen, which is why the queen is first, because the last one is the page. The start of the next cycle is going to be a queen. You, at some point, will leave your princess stage and not leave your father, but you will elevate into a queen. This is a masculine, feminine description. Either every knight becomes a king and every page or princess becomes a queen. That's how I read the energy. Also, I changed the order of the outside a little bit. Whatever. I have videos on that. So let's get started by reading this energy, though. So the very first placement we have is the world card. So again, if you're going to change everything, you have to start by changing the world. But the world, not the world on the outside of you, the world on the inside of you. So the world is culmination, perfection, end of one cycle and beginning of another, and the great dance of time. There's no it's no coincidence that the literal first card is the ending of one cycle and the start of another. So this baton, which was supposed to be passed over back in 1992, where they were supposed to put elevate the women and put us back in the proper position, in the proper order, and they didn't, because especially black women, because they gave us as I've discussed many times, our first black president, Bill Clinton, and his saxophone, and they just never did what they were supposed to do. This is when, lots of horrible things happened to the black family, the crime bills and all this stuff. This was all under Clinton. Black women were supposed to be elevated. Black women were supposed to be put back in our place. They have known this for many years, that this was supposed to happen, and they just tried to kick it down the road by assuming, the image of being black. So now the astrology has commanded it. Hey, we're starting this new cycle, whether you're ready or not. And so I heard someone say, which I want you all to keep in mind, that before the righteous feminine can arise, the dark feminine must be exposed. And so there are a lot of people who are, or the negatively polarized feminine must be exposed, which I call the Jezebel, the parasites that are eating away with you. Because if you think about the story of Jezebel, which I may or may not make a video about, she was a parasite on Ahab. She was eating away at him and he didn't even know it. And so that's how the negatively polarized feminine works. It eats away at you. You don't know what's going on. You have no idea how bad of a condition you're in until, the whole thing is basically just turned on its head. So that's pretty much what we have going on. And even that is a female is very telling, right? So the next placement we have, and that's the ascendant. All right, the next placement we have is the moon, which is in Pisces, and this is the 10 of coins. And the 10 of coins is carefree, harmony, and happy love. So as this new cycle starts, we should be, as I have mentioned, we should be carefree and happy. This thing should have started in 2020, and the first thing that should have happened is we should have been taken care of. Now, some people did experience that, but I'm also understanding that some people did not experience that. So this ties into the story of Ruth, because remember, as soon as she followed Naomi, right? As soon as she got to Bethlehem, she was taken care of. There was no, oh, I've got to figure out what to do. My life is in shambles, all that. No, as soon as you make the transition into the new cycle, which some people have not made this transition yet. This is a 20-year cycle. You make the transition. Oh, okay. One of the channelers I watched, she described how there would be people participating in a quote-unquote Operation Warp Speed. And Operation Warp Speed is where you could get 3 years in 3 years, you could get 30 years of knowledge. That's what this is. Some people will take this entire 20-year cycle to get to this point, because the moon is an emotional card. So you could take 20 years to get to the point where you are carefree and in harmony and happy love. But that's the goal. This whole reset thing, if I was going to reset into some energy, it would be this right here. I would just set a new beginning and then right into being carefree and happy and not worrying about anything. That is what was promised to us. That's what Ruth received. Like I said, as soon as she got to Bethlehem, she was taken care of. All the problems she thought that she was going to have, they just all disappeared. And that's an option. But you have to choose it. The next placement we have is the Queen of Wands, which is in Aries. And that's pride, femininity, self-conscious. So again, again, as I mentioned, the femininity will rise. Once we get into this carefree, happy stage, the divine feminine will rise. And again, it will be a correction period, because these are wands and not swords. It's not off with her head, Marie Antoinette, like they're trying to convince us. It's correcting those who are in more negatively polarized energy into more positively polarized energy. And this has nothing to do with whether a person is practicing witchcraft or sorcery or whatever. It has to do with your intention. A lot of people are in negatively polarized energy, and they go into these churches and they're proclaiming the name of Jesus, which is probably the only thing that's saving them. But there's also a lot of people who are doing black magic against different entities that are in positively polarized energy, because they are doing it with the intent of helping the collective and of moving the collective forward and of clearing out old energy, old stagnant energy. We need warriors on both sides. And I don't think that people really believe that, or they understand it, or whatever, but it happens to be true. All right, our next placement, that was Chiron, I'm sorry. The next one we have is Mars, and that is also in Aries, and that's the Four of Wands. And the Four of Wands is peace, happiness, and harmony. So basically, once you start this new cycle, and a lot of people are holding on to the old cycle. What does holding on to the old cycle look like? It looks like I'm a Hebrew Israelite, and I'm going to follow all these Hebrew rules, and I'm going to ignore the fact that there's some issues and there's some problems, and I'm just going to keep going with this old cycle. I'm a Christian, and I've always been a Christian, and Jesus is my king, but I'm not going to look into how my heart is, or I hate religion. Religion is horrible. It does nothing but destroy everybody. I'm never going back into the church, even though some of the solutions that you need, the discipline that you need, because remember, this is Aquarius energy that's also lined up with the sun, which is in Capricorn, which is Saturn. So you got some Saturn energy in there too. So some people need to go back and learn some discipline that they can only learn from the church. There's different things. Everybody is on a different path. Of course, you would have to get a personalized chart to see which one is what you actually need. It comes up in your chart, but you would have to get a personalized chart. So all I'm saying is, there should, once you have the new beginning, whatever the new beginning is for you, in my case, it was literally moving. It was physically moving, physically going into a church I'd never been into, physically going into several disciplinary practices within the church that I've never participated in. It's very regimented. This was my new beginning. And for everyone, it will be different, right? Because it depends on what house this thing took place for you in your chart. But again, you'll get peace, happiness, and harmony. These first 4 cards are all about literally money and protecting your peace. I mean, who would be turning away from that? Even this whole first row. Because the next one, we have Uranus, which is in Taurus, and this is the Knight of Wands, fiery love, self-confidence, and motivation. These are all things that move you in the right direction, like in the direction you're supposed to go. The next placement is the Lovers, and we have a double dose of the Lovers. Again, coming in, wrapping you up in this love that you need. The Lovers is a choice between 2 paths, sacred and profane, love and duty, good and evil, the contradictions and duality of human nature. So imagine, making the choice, being this is the story of Naomi. Because Naomi and Ruth, this is their literal story. This is crazy. They had a new beginning. They immediately walked into money because Naomi had a piece of land that her husband owned. Then what did Ruth do? Ruth listened to Naomi. They had a happy life. Boaz comes in. The Lovers, as in Ruth and Boaz, get married, and then the Lovers again because Ruth delivers a child, Obed, to Naomi to basically replace her sons that were lost. This is the story. This is the story right here. This is the story. And our part of fortune is the Lovers too. So you can really change everything if you will give into or submit to the new beginning. Now, the new beginning is probably something you don't want, but hey, it is what it is. All right, so after we have those 2 Lovers cards, we have the Ace of Wands, which is in Gemini as well, and this is courage, desire, and positivity. More positive changes, more good energy coming in. It's almost like a hard stop on the goodness, because after that point, that's basically where the story of Ruth ends. And I always wondered why it was only 4 books. Well, you only needed 4 chapters to tell this story. You don't need a long, I would love to know what happened to her afterwards, but courage, desire, and positivity is all positive from there. Why? Because Ruth became in the bloodline of Jesus as a Moabitess. So that's a hard stop on the story. That's what that Ace of Wands, because remember, it's correction. It's correcting the past, correcting the wrongs of the bitterness, which is Jezebel, that the Almighty, which is the negatively polarized feminine, did when they took both her sons and her husband from Naomi and left her with no heirs and no one to take care of her. And then Ruth stepped into that place and produced an heir that was still in her actual bloodline. So that's really interesting. All right, so the next placement we have is the Descendant, which is in Virgo, and that's the Hermit. That's the journey towards secrets revealed, willful intelligence, enlightenment, the inner life, or a pilgrim. So basically, when you all the way up to this point, from the Ascendant to the Descendant, this is all because if the wheel is flipped, this is all what happens on the outside, the first 6 houses. This is what it's going to look like on the inside. From this point, we're going to look at what happens on this is what happens on the outside. This is what it's going to look like. When people look at you, they're going to like, oh, you made a big, bold change. And you look like everything was taken care of from that point. It all looks good. It's going to look really good on the outside. From this point, the descendant until the end is going to be what happens, the things that are going to take place on the inside. How these things are going to affect you on the inside. And of course, remember, this is like a 20-year cycle. So this is over the next 20 years. This story is going to play out. This is what's going to look like. Because one thing they don't say in Ruth is how exactly long this whole story played out. Because I know they showed up at the beginning of harvest, but how long does harvest take? I mean, I don't know enough about that to be able to identify the exact timeline. But we do have an exact timeline with this conjunction. Because it's going to last 20 years. All right, so this is what's going to be happening on the inside, while all of these things are happening on the outside. And of course, this descendant point is going to basically set the tone for our next ascendant, like what happens in the next ascendant. So this is a lot of activity. This is a lot of changing direction, fulfilling of desires, fulfilling of destiny. But you can't get started until the rapid change comes, the sudden ending, the ending in the new beginning, whatever it may be. It doesn't come until you take that particular play, until that thing happens. All right, so let's start with the swords. All right, so the very first placement right here is Venus, which is in Sagittarius, which is the Eight of Swords. And the Eight of Swords is overthinking, self-criticism, and entrapment. So this is probably also like what will slow you down from this start that you're supposed to have, what will keep you. And these are things that are all happening on the inside. So this is not somebody entrapping you on the outside. This is your thinking entrapping you. This is your, and of course it's mimicked by the card. The lady has on a blindfold, so she doesn't see anything around her, but she's still imagining in her mind that she's surrounded by swords that she can't get out of. But clearly she has an easy path out if she would take the blindfold off. So again, we have to remove the blindfold from whatever is holding us back in our life, whatever is giving us this idea that we can't accomplish this and we can't accomplish that. That's not how it works. It's just not like that. We have to really overcome that and step forward in what it is that we're supposed to be doing. But you have to do that on the inside. The next placement is the Nine of Swords in reverse. And this is the South Node, which is in Sagittarius as well. And in reverse is hope, despair, and fear of loss. So again, you have to know that what you're afraid of losing, you're not going to lose. When Naomi lost her sons, she received the bloodline of Jesus. Like she didn't lose anything. Yes, she lost those two sons that she bore and her husband that she loved, but she gained a grandson that was, end up being one of the fathers of David. Like she gained within her life something that would to replace what was lost. Is it an exact replacement, dollar for dollar? Not exactly. Because a son you bore and this and that is not the same as a grandson. However, I feel like that was probably not the only child Ruth had. You know what I mean? Like they just made it seem like it, but we don't know for sure. I doubt it. I highly doubt it. So she gained a whole new family and a new position as the big mama of this bloodline. If we're looking for the progenitor of this bloodline, you can't leave Naomi out. She is the one who made it possible by her faithfulness and not shunning away her daughter-in-law when her daughter-in-law was insisting on coming, right? All right, so the next placement we have is the MC, which is the Father's Point, I call it, midheaven. And it's in Sagittarius, and this is the Ace of Swords, which is reason, illuminating, and sharp mind. So this is where you have to, these are all swords. So these are not, so on the outside, it's going to look like, just some little corrections. But on the inside, it's going to look like things have to be cut. You have to tear down the old walls, put in new stuff. It's a lot of stuff that has to be done. It's not no little bit of stuff. It's a lot. Okay. This makes sense. Okay, so the next two cards we have are the Two of Pentacles, which is for the Sun and Mercury, which is adaptation, ease, and priorities. So this is when you have to weigh out what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong, what you want, what you don't want. And you kind of have to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, trying to figure out what it is exactly that you want to do. This is, you know, once you start making these cuts, you have to decide whether they were good cuts, whether they were bad cuts, whether you wanted them or you didn't want them. You kind of go back and forth with that. So that's basically, you know, what's going to happen. And then at the end of this going back and forth, you have the Queen of Pentacles, which is the Pluto position in Capricorn, and that is femininity, fertility, and sensuality. So imagine that once you tear down this old stuff, you build your confidence up, you decide what needs to be changed or what doesn't need to be changed, you finally get to a point where you have your self-value on the inside. So on the outside, it's just going to look like kind of easy, but on the inside, you're going to have to find that value within yourself. That's what all of the tearing down is. You have to tear yourself down to the bottom layers and find out what really makes you valuable. And if you're able to do that, then you will be able to, you know, navigate this time period. Again, this is a 20-year time period. The faster you learn the lesson, you don't have to learn the lesson again. Like I always say, like the problem is people are going to take 30 years to do this when they could indeed do it in 3 years. We're almost, in my calculation, we're almost at the end of the 3 years. Like I feel like I have this pretty down pack now. But if people didn't start when we all started together back in August of 22, then their 3-year period haven't even started yet. But this can be over with in a 3-year period. It doesn't have to last. This is 2024. We're 2 years into the 3 years. The third year just be cleaning up the first 2 years, the mess of the first 2 years. But anyway, after that, we have a double 5 of Pentacles, which is poverty, fear of loss, and isolation. So that's where you, on the inside, you're isolating yourself from these different entities, from these, you know, these things within you that don't belong in you. You are taking away the value from things that have assigned themselves value in your life, and you're placing the value where it belongs with you on the inside. That's the kind of energy that this particular placement has. And so that's what I would that's how I interpret this. Like, you've been given the queen, you're the queen of coins, you've been given the coin on the inside. Now you have to decide, hey, these guys are walking away from the coins. You decide to kick out these entities and these energies that don't align with where you're going. So this is all like inside work. This is what's going to be happening on the inside. It's going to look really, really, it's going to feel really intense, but it's going to create the opportunity for you to move forward in a way that is helpful and that puts you in control of what's going on in the inside of you. Because another part of the problem is that we have not been controlled because of the propaganda and the mind control and the programming. We are not in control of what's going on the inside of us. And so it's really easy for people to just get distracted and confused and all of this stuff because they're not in control of what's going on the inside of them. So this is an opportunity to put you back into control of what's going on the inside of you. Whereas before, it was totally outside. It was out of your hands, basically. It was in the hands of someone else. And now we're bringing it back and putting it back on the inside. Right? And then just to tie it up with a bow, we're ending with the Princess of Swords. Page of Swords, which is clear mind, new experience, and adventure, which will indeed set us up for the transition in 2040 into the next start of the Saturn Jupiter cycle. So hopefully this makes sense. This is basically what's going to, again, the sooner you learn these lessons, the sooner you can just be doing the part that you like, doing the massive restarts and really getting a new image and all of that stuff that can be seen on the outside, and while you're dealing with the stuff that's on the inside. So I hope that this has made sense to you. There's going to be an extended part of this video, like I said, on Patreon. We're going to continue discussing, and this is the public facing part. So peace and blessings, and of course we'll see you in the next video.